Hello, Metal Gear fans. This is our Metal Gear year back. We're doing a special episode today. We're having sort of a podcast format today. We're talking to you actually from the past. So this is back before September 1st. So we don't have the glory of the Phantom Pain, taking over our minds at this point. So what's that like? Have you guys extended to just beings of pure thought at this point? Pity us back in the past. But the reason we are recording this right now is because we've just finished Metal Gear Solid 2, and it's such a complicated game, and it has so much to say that we wanted to have a special episode where we actually sit down and just talk about all the things that happened to us. Because while we were playing it, it just came at us, 1,000 miles an hour. We didn't have time to sit down and talk about all the things because as soon as we wanted to say something else happened, and we didn't have time to go over what a complicated game it is. Also, we're going to take this time to do some wrap up because we asked you guys a lot of questions as the show went on to ask you to participate. And thank God, I just want to say thank all of the people who watch your show, who interact with us, who leave any messages in the comments section or give us any words of encouragement, because we actually want to address and say, we appreciate it so much and we do listen and we love that you watch us. So we're going to address some of those things. So now that I've got that out of the way, I'd just like to say, hi, Josh.
Hello, Justin.
And Dora, you're here too?
Yeah, I am.
Yay! So we're all here. So now that we have finished the mindfuck that is Metal Gear Solid 2, just real briefly, if you can just kind of like summarize it, because we're going to get into this a lot later. Real briefly, like Josh, what would you say your overall impression of Metal Gear Solid 2? Or even if just the ending?
Metal Gear Solid 2 is probably one of the most ambitious games ever made.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
In a lot of ways. It's just, it's insane, and I don't think anything will probably ever be done similarly again, unless it is the Phantom Pain.
Ooh, that gives us something to look forward to, huh? Yeah. Dora, do you have it, you're just at the end of the day,
I'd say that my overall thoughts of it, I think that coming back to it and playing it again, there were a lot of things that I appreciated about it now than I didn't appreciate about it initially, including some of the deeper things, some of the codec calls that were that really went in depth about a lot of the background things about the Patriots and things like that. There are things like that I appreciate a lot more now. But also replaying it made me realize that some of the parts that I really liked as a kid aren't as great as I remember them being. Huh. And then I also wanted to say that, I felt like just to be a little bit more critical, I feel like there are parts where they were just really overindulgent. Things about, the president talk for, that was literally, 30 minutes. And I just feel like there were parts that were just far too indulgent. And I think that he maybe took a little bit too much liberty and kind of put it at the cost of the...
So classic, a classic Kojima criticism.
Yeah.
Just indulgent codex.
And I feel like yeah, you're right. That is a classic Kojima criticism. And I really start to understand it a little bit more. And especially playing this game and having to sit through them, I feel like I always kind of skip some of the cutscenes. But I still really appreciate what he's trying to do. Like Josh, I really appreciate what he's trying to do, and I do think it's very ambitious, and I do appreciate that he put so much work into creating this universe. But at the same time, you can't expect the player to just sit there and watch all this insane footage from bombs and things like that and want to stick with it.
But isn't that the point? We'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah.
We'll get a little later.
I feel like he moved from Metal Gear Solid 1 and Metal Gear Solid 2 and then Metal Gear Solid 3 and 4. 4 was the extreme point. 1 was when he was first starting and there wasn't a lot of cutscenes, and the ones that were there were pretty short. Mm-hmm. Whereas Metal Gear Solid 4 was the extreme, the apex.
Yeah, it's basically a movie.
Yeah, and it looks like we're going the other way with we had Peace Walker, and then Phantom Pain looks to have less cutscenes.
Right. So I'm not going to say anything because Josh, at this point in time, I don't know how much you know about the Phantom Pain, but as far as I know about the Phantom Pain, it looks like we get rid of codec calls altogether. There's another system in place. Kaz and Ocelot still talk to you over your walkie, but it's not a codec call. It doesn't stop the game. There's a whole new system in place of that, and it's pretty natural from picking up where Ground Zero's left off.
Yeah.
It's funny because people listening to this will be like, oh, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Bastards.
But Dora, just to address something that you said one of the things that you really enjoyed was how good it was to return to it. And I think that's something that is like one of the best things about this game, replayability. Because it's one of those, like, it's like a movie, and that's something that's going to come up a lot too. It's like a movie that merits repeat viewing.
Right, it's replayability not in the traditional video game sense,
right.
but replayability like listening to an album you really like that's really complex and layered, and just like a movie that you can, each time you watch it, you pick up little details that you didn't see the first few times.
Right.
The funny thing about that, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in fact, I mean, in my 60-second statement that lasted longer than 60 seconds.
I never actually put a time time limit on it.
I was going to say that I actually contradicted myself because, and I caught myself too late, but that I said that I liked that it was complex, but at the same time I felt like it was overindulgent. So I think that I still appreciate those things that are overindulgent, but sometimes, you know what I mean? Like there are points where you're just like, I just want to fucking move on.
Yeah, he could put things more succinctly. You didn't need 30 minutes to say what the president said.
I don't need Emma to tell me about this virus. Like I just don't need that.
Well, that's good. That's a great point, because that you're saying, I don't know how to feel about this. You almost feel kind of schizophrenic. And that, again, I'm going to come back to that later. That's exactly how you're supposed to feel. And even when I was saying that it's great replayability, but that is also, like, it's replayability for the message, but the gameplay is so frustrating because you're doing the same things over and over again and getting repeat codec calls, and it's almost like punishing you because it feels like you're replaying the first game. So as summary of what Metal Gear Solid 2 is, I think that's fucking perfect, because it is a great heady piece of art, you could say.
Absolutely.
But as a video game, what the fuck? Like, it's just confusing. It's not what you signed up for.
Right.
So that's what we thought of the game, and just because I wanted to, interact a little bit with the people. Again, did I mention that I love every single one of you? Anyone who watches the show. If you watch this show, you are a model citizen and practically a saint. I just love it so much, and that means
you're a diamond dog.
You are a diamond dog. And that means nothing coming from me, because I mean, I'm worthless. But you know what I'm trying to say. One of the things that I did is I put up a poll in one of the Metal Gear communities, and we pretty much said what our favorite moments are. And just real briefly, just to go over that again, if we want to rehash what our favorite moments are, I would say for me, and you'll have seen this in the episode because I fucking gushed during it, any part where the Colonel goes fucking crazy. Especially, I Need Scissors 61. That is just the epitome of perfect Metal Gear shit to me. That's my favorite moment. Josh, your favorite moment?
My favorite moment is right before the Solidus fight, when you get the codec call from the Patriots, and it goes back and forth between Rose and the Colonel, and he's sort of talking about information and memes and all
what
that
a tool
sort of stuff.
You are.
Basically predicting where we're at now, predicting Reddit before it existed.
Yeah.
Like
junk data.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And so I'm amazed at how well it was translated from Japanese to English.
Yeah. Ages.
Yeah.
Incredibly. Like, when you say age, it doesn't. It's actually predictive. Like, it applies to us more now. I mean, we made fun of it because there's like Y2K references, and I used a modem and I had a web page. Like they're acting like it's super futuristic, even though they have nanomachines.
And I mean, Kojima wasn't the first one talking about memes and all this stuff,
right?
But to
put it in a video game, though,
regardless, to put it in a video game like that is crazy, and I love it.
Dora, your favorite moment?
I think my favorite moment, or maybe just moments, is meeting Snake as someone outside.
Oh, Iroquois Pliskin.
Yeah, meeting Iroquois Pliskin, and not just even just that moment, but meeting Iroquois Pliskin, and then like being a part of that experience of like and slowly figuring out it is Snake, and
very, very slowly,
very too slowly, but also like, and then Otacon's with him, and how fucking cool is that? Like they're together, they're a team. They're just awesome. And then there's a moment of them like walking in slow motion. You're just like, this
the Michael Bay
is so fucking cool. Like
John Woo slow motion.
Because I guess maybe mine's sentimental though, because I grew up with Metal Gear Solid 1. So like seeing Snake seeing Otacon and Snake as an outsider, and them being a team, and them being badass, and them being rogue, and like fighting Metal Gear on their own I just think that's just so cool.
It's like the
to me.
cruise back. Yeah.
So
We're
gonna
it's
get
like an action film. Like it's an action film moment. Like I'm
Yeah.
not even that big of a fan of action films, and
Yeah.
that's like for me that's like one of the coolest moments.
We're gonna
of
get
the
into this a little bit later, but you would say that the whole point of Raiden's character was to establish that feeling in the viewer and in the player, and so you'd feel like that was completely successful.
game. Absolutely.
It goes
For
back
me.
to like, oh, I want to be him instead of being like, I am him.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So that was what we thought. Let's get into a little bit of what you guys thought. I did a little poll in one of the Metal Gear communities and had a lot of interactions, a lot of votes on it. Thank you guys for interacting with that. Just real quick, I threw out just the basic like highlights of the game. It limited me to what moments I could choose. So I just chose based on like our interactions, comments, and what we hear on the show thought. So according to you guys out there, the number one favorite section of Metal Gear Solid 2, the tanker section. Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, I was watching the poll for like an hour, and for the first hour, 100% the tanker section.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh, obviously, come on.
Yeah.
You know. And it's weird because you were saying that your favorite thing about the Dora, your favorite thing about the game was seeing Snake as an outsider.
Yeah.
And then not being Snake, but the most like people's favorite memory is the tanker section where you are Snake.
Well, because it's so satisfying. It's like
it's
like eating a piece of candy versus, you know what I mean? I don't know. It's just
someone
like
dangling it in front of you.
instead of like not just dangling in
watching
front of
someone
you,
else
but
eat
like,
candy.
or like working towards your piece of candy. I just feel like it's one of those things that's so satisfying. You get exactly what you want. But to me, that part of the game, it's fun, but it's a little boring. It's
The tanker section?
It's not. There's not a ton of thought in it, in my opinion. Like just not a lot. Like when you move past the tanker section, I feel like that's when things start getting a little bit more complicated.
But
and
it
you have to
takes
start
a
really
while,
thinking
though.
about
It takes a while for that to
yeah,
happen.
I'm not saying that there
Yeah.
aren't faults.
Yeah.
There's a lot of faults, but I'm just saying
That's this game in a nutshell.
it's so basic because he's like, here's what you want, and then I'm going to take it away from you. But it's that basic that this is exactly what the player wants. There's nothing more to it.
Yeah.
With a whopping 43%, most of you out there agree that the tanker section is the number one section, the most fondly remembered section of the game. And a distant second, because it was only 20%, was actually my favorite moment, Crazy Colonel, Naked Raiden section. So crawling your way to Arsenal Gear with the VR trails behind you with the hexagons. Game looks like it's glitching out. Colonel actually tells you to turn off the fucking game, which, by the way, is a callback to the first Metal Gear, which I just remembered. In the first Metal Gear game for the MSX, right before you find out that big boss is the one who's behind everything, he actually says, turn off the game. So that you can go back into the MSX game, and that's the first time you see it. But that was 20%. Right after that was the final Solidus fight. So the rooftop Federal Hall fight with Solidus, 16%.
That is pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. I remember hating the game for a long time because I thought it was so boring. And then the Crazy Colonel part, everything goes haywire. And by the time I got to that Federal Hall fight, I was fucking on board. And
a fucking sword fight.
And a sword fight, which you've never seen before. And then like Solidus is boosting around on jet fucking shoes and sparks are flying everywhere. I was like, I'm fucking in.
And how weird is that they're just like, here's a sword. Use it for the final battle. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
There's nothing referencing a sword up until this point. What's going on?
It's all been guns.
Yeah, it's all been guns.
And
Weird.
I don't know. I think that, to fairness, Josh, your favorite moment, I think I would sandwich it between both of those because those are kind of like the end of the game.
Yeah, that's where they sort of, it's the bridge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say behind that final Solidus fight would be Raiden fights multiple Rays.
Oh my gosh, I
which
love
Dora
that
is
part.
the
It's
section
my
that you
favorite
love.
boss.
That got 11%.
It is fun.
Yeah.
I like that.
Super fun.
It's 25 of the same boss, but yeah, it's really fun to sort of manage because you're dealing with like 2 to 3 of them at a time, and you have to manage which one's attacking when by shooting them in the knees and getting in the shots where you can, but also avoiding missiles. It's very, you're focused in that moment.
And it's overwhelming. Like there is a feeling of like, how the fuck am I going to get out of this?
Yeah.
Like, because if you like stop for a moment and look around, you're literally surrounded by like 20 Metal Gears, and you're like, I have no idea how I'm going to get through this.
Yeah, you shoot one and then another one pops up there, and they just keep coming.
And they just keep going, and you're just like, I don't know if this will ever stop.
And depending on your gameplay style, that is something that can go on for fucking almost an hour.
Oh, absolutely.
I've seen people play it that, because you can get to like the 24th Ray and then die and have to start all over again.
Yeah.
But I would, Dora fucking killed it. You did first try. First fucking try. So if you're an ace like Dora, it's no sweat.
Yeah, if you know what you're doing, man.
No sweat off your sack.
It's just a pattern. Like, you have to memorize a pattern.
And in last place, which, to be fair, I got a couple of votes. A lot of people voted on this. So to be fair, some people did like it. Introduction of Raiden for the first time. That 9% of the vote. So introduction to the series, because without Raiden, you don't get Metal Gear Solid 4 and you don't get Rising.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I thought was really interesting in doing this series that I never considered before is that Raiden is some people's favorite character.
Yeah.
He's their favorite thing to come out of the show.
I've known some people that really love Raiden.
Yeah.
Those hips don't lie.
It's true. Yeah, those motherly hips.
Yeah.
I had no idea that people love Raiden that much. And then we did the show, and then just people came out of the woodwork.
I wonder if it's like if they've always loved Raiden, or if it was looking back, because I sort of felt the same way when it first came out of like, who the hell is this guy? Why am I not playing a Solid Snake? But coming back to it many years later, you realize his purpose and why he's there. You come with a little bit more experience, a little bit more understanding of stories and media and how it all comes together, and then you really appreciate him. So I wonder if it was they were always a fan, or if it was a looking back and then playing it now, like, oh yeah, Raiden's a great character because of what he represents.
Well, yeah, and he also represents you, so there's also some sort of like he's easy to put yourself in his shoes, so that could be part of why people really like him too. Like, he's really accessible.
Yeah, you're
and
confused.
He has a
confused.
complicated history. That's interesting.
Well, there's some things that I want to get into there. That's a great segue, because I want to segue into addressing some of the open-ended questions we had to the fans and see what they thought. And one of the first questions we asked in this series for Metal Gear Solid 2 was, how did the fans feel about the introduction of Raiden? And we had hypothesized in the show that the whole thing about people hating fucking Raiden and Raiden's a despised character was a myth. And guess what it was? Like 90% of the responses that we got from people, and we got several responses. And I mean, like, pages worth of responses on this. Most people, 90% of those people, either didn't care or they thought it was interesting. And the number one thing that people said was that they appreciated Raiden because he was supposed to be an analog of the player.
Right.
It was supposed to be as though he was more like, instead of playing as a badass agent who knew everything and knew the ins and outs of everything, you were a fresh rookie and you identified with Raiden more. Earlier in the series, we had a special episode with Ryan, our friend Ryan, and I asked him about that off air, and we did get a recording of his reaction to that, and I think he pretty much sums up what everyone thought. So I'm just going to cut back to that interview real quick just so we can summarize what most of you guys thought out there.
So why this game is particularly different from the other Metal Gear games, which in general I'm just a very big fan of all Metal Gear Solid games. Why I like this one, because it gave us a different viewpoint on how we're able to play the game. For once, we weren't the main hero. For once, we were kind of our own guy with his own kind of insecurities, whereas the main hero is kind of off doing his own thing. And we're kind of a side story that ultimately would cross paths with that. So that's why I like this game quite a bit. I was really, being a kid, you just kind of roll with whatever you're dealt. But like, as I kind of grew into it, like, I wasn't so much like, oh, Raiden is a kind of annoying younger character. Raiden was like me. So that was like kind of a persona of myself at the time. So, well, I wouldn't do naked car wheels, but I don't know. I felt like me playing as Raiden didn't give me the opportunity to really screw up the legacy of Snake. Like, I didn't have to live up to the legend of Snake anymore, and I can kind of just dig around.
And I feel like that summarizes it pretty well. I do think it is interesting because the number one response, too, when talking about Raiden was, it was like so interesting how many people said that they never actually played Metal Gear Solid 2 by themselves. Mm-hmm. So many of you out there said that you were visiting a family or a friend or a neighbor and you weren't playing it for the first time. Metal Gear Solid 1 mostly. This applies to Metal Gear Solid 2 as well. That you experienced Metal Gear Solid through the eyes, like through someone else interacting with it, and you were off to the sideline. And Dora, I know that is true for you.
Yeah, and that goes back to it being like a movie. Like, I feel like Metal Gear games are fun, despite like even if you're not playing them, they're fun to watch. They're fun to be involved in some way, and you can help. And I just think that that's such a really cool quality of a game, is if it's not just fun to play, but it's fun to sit on the sidelines and watch someone play and feel like you're part of you're part of it just as much as if you were playing it.
I think it's interesting too, because there's a whole thing about that, about like how cool Snake is supposed to be. And it's interesting because like my first experience with Metal Gear Solid was watching it at a friend's house, and then my cousin's house watching Metal Gear Solid 2, and it was Raiden, and I was really confused by it. And it's weird, and it's kind of like an accident that the whole thing about Raiden's character is supposed to be someone who wants to be Snake. And it's interesting that so many of us interacted with Metal Gear Solid 1, and Josh, you're the exemption to this, because I think you legitimately just played it.
Yeah, Metal Gear Solid 1.
Yeah, you played it yourself. So you're the exception to this. But a lot of us saw like these main characters as a proxy. Like we played through, we imagined we were playing it, even though it was our brother, it was our cousin, it was a neighbor. That came out through so many of the responses, and I just think it's interesting that like Kojima somehow tapped into that with the Raiden character, someone wanting to be Snake.
Right.
It's almost like it's an extension of that he's like that brother. He's like us as a viewer, and he's like wanting to play the game, wanting to be Snake. And then like we wanted to play Metal Gear Solid, so it inspired us to pick up the sequel to play it.
I wonder if that's where the community was born, like the Metal Gear Solid community, because it was like back then there wasn't like an internet. It was like word of mouth, friends telling you about this crazy part in this game, or like finding out how to get past Psycho Mantis by talking to a friend. And the same thing happens with Dark Souls and Demon Souls, and everything Miyazaki makes is pretty much like a community coming together to solve a thing or talk about a thing, whereas most stuff is just like can be individually experienced and just on to the next one.
Yeah, I think that's where so much of the Metal Gear the franchise comes to life, is when it's embraced by the community, is the people talking about it. We're doing this fucking podcast right now because there's so many interpretations of the game out there.
Right. I'm not going to do a podcast about Shadow of Mordor or any other game, I guess.
So next to the Raiden thing, the second question that we posed to you was I reached out and said, we have an explanation, like we want to know explanations for why that Vulcan figure is on the fucking tanker. And at the time, what we proposed that it was Ocelot fucking with Snake, and that I even made the joke that he had hidden a bunch of other Foxhound figures on the tanker. So in the tanker section, you come out and there's a big shadow, and you're supposed to think it's Vulcan Raven, and then you turn around and it's an action figure that shoots BBs. And it actually turns out that later in the game, in the plant section, there are boxes of McFarlane toys. And then Josh, you and I were like, it's legitimately just a McFarlane toy that's on the tank.
Toy.
Yeah. But I asked some fans out there, like viewers, what they thought, like what would be a cool explanation, like in world, because it's just a meta Easter egg. Like I think you can't really take it further than that.
Right.
But just for fun, I asked some people for their what their interpretations were, and got some really, really cool responses. So if you want to indulge me a little bit, I'd like to share that with some of our viewers because I think they're worth talking about. One of the responses I got was from Flash Medallion, who's actually one of the mods on the Metal Gear Reddit. So I think that's pretty exciting.
Nice.
Yeah. He came up with one. He says, what we do know is there's a Vulcan Raver figure in the big shell 2 years later. So they're probably mass produced, and that's true. In the swimming section, and when you're swimming at the EE, you can go through one of the rooms, and there's a Vulcan Raven figure floating around.
Okay.
And he says, B, it's more of a toy than a figure since it shoots BBs when activated.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
And then he says, in conclusion, whoever made them had access to the voice recordings of Vulcan Raven. So I'm going to conclude that it was the Patriots mass-producing Foxhound toys to sell to children. This kills two birds with one stone. Subtle indoctrination into PMC/war economy, and it also subtly discredits In the Darkness of Shadow Moses by associating perception of the Foxhound unit with a fictional, larger-than-life children's toy line.
Hey, that's
damn.
valid.
That's pretty good, huh?
Well done.
That's real good.
That's pretty good.
I just thought that one was interesting. That was one of my favorites. Most people just assumed that it was the Patriots spying on Snake and sort of like, haha, like leaving it out there. And Dora, it's kind of like the ending of Blade Runner. Remember at the end of Blade Runner when he picks up the unicorn?
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be like, we know.
Yeah.
Most people said it was like that. That it was
Okay.
just supposed to be the Patriots. Oh, we know about you, Snake. We know what you're doing. But my absolute favorite response comes to us from Josh Dragon 92. And what he did is he wrote a little short story. It's a little paragraph. So if you indulge me, I'm going to read it. One of the Marines was on tour in the Middle East. After the conflict ended, the Foxhound soldier that single-handedly ended the conflict was praised as a hero. Part of the praise was making action figures in his likeness. The Marine saw one of the toys and bought it for his son back home. The young boy loved it, and wherever the boy went, the Raven toy had to go too. The father of the boy soon had to go on a top-secret mission. He explained to the boy that the mission was very important, but required him to go away once again. The child was sad, but asked his father to take the Raven with him. Vulcan Raven is a pro at top-secret missions, the boy said. If you take him with you, he will help you get back sooner, and we can be together again. All of this flashed before the soldier's eyes as he stood hiding in the locker, knowing the terrorists would find him, and he wouldn't ever see his boy again.
Christ almighty.
Oh, damn.
That just broke my heart.
Soul-crushing, right?
Yeah.
But Josh Dragon 92, you win the gold.
You stole our hearts.
You stole our hearts and you crushed them. But I mean, like, just asking for a realistic explanation.
Yeah, you've got like a history behind the figurine. It's not just a figurine on it.
Yeah, and there's like a real character. And again, it humanizes all those soldiers on that tanker, because we were talking about like how weird is it that you're just like, people are getting their throats slit and being shoved off the boat, and these are regular soldiers. They're not genome soldiers or anything. These are just Marines on a boat.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool.
That is really cool. Also, I really love that he really considered the room that it's in. That's really really thoughtful.
Yeah, all those soldiers die. Like, even if the terrorists,
Yeah.
the Russian soldiers didn't get them, that fucking boat sinks.
And they're like-
so everyone's dead.
They're wearing the friendliest uniforms. It was just like the yellow jumpsuits. Friendliest people you've ever met.
So thank you, everyone who submitted a response to that. They're all great, and I really appreciate everyone interacting with
it's
us.
really
But
cool.
those were some of the best ones. One quick thing is, one of my fucking pet peeves with this game was that scene where you're fighting Fortune, and she has her field up, and you can't shoot her. And it's basically evade Fortune. You survive Fortune. And at the end of that boss fight, quote-unquote boss fight, there's a cutscene where you're shooting at Fortune and the bullet ricochets off her shield and it hits Vamp directly in the forehead. And there's this long, like 5-minute scene where she cries over his body, even though he's an immortal. They fought together for something like 2 to 3 years,
Right.
And they've seen, like, if you read the backstory, they've been in Dead Cell for a while. They've taken on dozens and dozens of soldiers, so he has to have been shot several times at this point. That was my pet peeve, and I said, if anyone out there has a good explanation for why the fuck this happened, let me know. And I just wanted to acknowledge that one of our top viewers, I've quoted him before on the show. He goes by, his handle is myself. So out there, if you're listening to this, again, we always appreciate your conversations. It's great talking shop with you. We had a long exchange trying to explain away what happened, and at the end of the day, we both said, basically boils down to the fact that Vamp had never been shot in the head before. That he usually dodges bullets, and that he takes him to the gut or to the shoulder, and so that him getting shot in the head was a shock. And just to read his quote real quick, he says, "My specific argument for this being the first time Vamp took a round is specific to the round to the head. Since the headshot scar persists for the rest of the series, and Fortune is surprised by its results, is a fairly safe bet this is the first one he has taken to the dome. Vampire or no, it's natural for Fortune to think a legit headshot would still kill him, even if she hadn't seen him survive it before. While soldiers regularly take a shot and Vamp regularly heals with damage, I doubt Vamp makes a habit of being shot in the face, even if he can survive it. And the fight still can't be pleasant." And then he also goes on to say, "Fortune as a character seems to be portrayed as a trauma survivor / depressed or suicidal and possibly bipolar. Rest assured, dramatic emotional outbursts fit with that. Later reveals around the character suggest that she is meant to be portrayed as annoying and melodramatic."
Well, there you go.
And so I think that
That's pretty good.
Yeah, we came to a consensus that like it is unnecessary and it's indulgent, but at least with like the Raven character, just trying to explain it within the story, I think that
Yeah.
is satisfactory.
I feel like
Me
that's
too.
actually a relevant, not even like just trying to explain it, but I feel like that makes sense. As you were reading it, I was thinking about like, oh yeah, the scar is on his head from that point on, and like he doesn't have any other scars on his face. So if the scars persist on Vamp, that probably was actually the first time he was shot in the head.
my specific problem with it was weird is that when you first see Vamp, he's slicing his chest and he's saying 5 today. Like Zaz from Batman. And it's supposed to be that every time he kills someone, he puts a slice on his chest. But you only see five marks, and he says 5 today, implying that he
heals.
He heals.
Huh.
So that's why it's weird. And it's also interesting that bullet mark does exist until Metal Gear Solid 4.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up.
Yeah, so
he still has it, Metal Gear Solid 4, as a callback.
What the fuck? Does he only heal on his body?
Yeah, is that fan service, or was it is it actually relevant?
I think it's fan service.
Yeah, I think it is.
I mean,
I think it's fan service.
Let's be honest. Vamp is fan service.
Yeah. Metal Gear Solid 4 is fan service.
Yeah, so I would just say thank you, myself, and we're going to come back to you later.
Thank you, myself.
Yeah, it sounds weird.
Thank you, myself.
But you know who you are. Thank you. And you have something else to say later on. We'll move on to that. That pretty much wraps up. I think those are all the relevant questions that we wanted to address, or responses that we wanted to address. So this kind of brings us to the conclusion of the game. So we finished the wrap-up section where we address business in the show. So now we're going to get to the heady part of the game where we kind of talk about our interpretations of the game and what we think. Because, I mean, man, stay tuned if you want to hear us talk about basically what we think the end of the game means. So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to hear all about it. Thanks, guys.